Hello and welcome to Shred Show. I am your host Chris Grow and this is the internet's most challenging surfboard show. We know this is a complex shape because when we look through the window on the deck we can see that within this surfboard is outer space. Today I have my hands full because I have more questions about this board than I have answers, but I have surfed it a bunch. We're going to use small words today and try to discuss the Vanguard using as simple words as we can. If you'd like to help me interpret the performance of the Vanguard, please do so in the YouTube comments below. Despite the fact that there's complexity around every corner of the Vanguard, I think that about 80% of this board's design can be understood through a conversation about parallel rails. Because of these parallel rails, which represent nearly straight lines on either side of the board, from the center to the tail, from the center to the nose, we can see that the planing surface on the bottom of this board stays relatively consistent from the nose all the way down to the tail. That means that as soon as water begins flowing into the nose of the surfboard on the bottom, that water is almost immediately flowing across a surface width almost equal to the widest point of this surfboard. If you want this to hit home, just imagine the last time that a really pointy nose on your surfboard helped you gain speed. That's never happened because when a surfboard has a really pointy nose, there's not a lot of surface area on that nose to plane on to help you generate speed. But the entire bottom of this surfboard has a ton of surface area all the way from the nose to the tail. Now because these parallel rails on either side of the board help us have such a fat tail and a fat nose, they help us take width away from the center of the board. That decreased width at center can make the board easier to crank around turns because we're not trying to turn as wide of a surfboard. Lastly, because the parallel rails hold planing area from the nose all the way to the tail, that helps us surf this board shorter than we would a normal shortboard. And what that does is it gives us a shorter rail line in the water, which can make this board more maneuverable. If you want to see what I mean, just check out the video of Stuart Kennedy in the YouTube info below surfing a Tomo. Pay attention to how quickly he goes from facing down the line on the wave to all of a sudden maneuvering immediately up towards the lip. For another 10% of this board's performance, we can look to the rocker, concave, and rail relationships. The single concave on the Vanguard is definitely in competition for the most aggressive, deepest single concave that we've seen on Shred Show. You may be able to see it right now if you can look past the nose contours. What that does is it acts for engine as a complement to the parallel rails on this board, giving the board lift and a ton of speed. If you feel one of these in a surf shop, you can feel that the rail definitely has a hard edge coming up a little bit further than normal. You can also see that this has got a pretty boxy rail. When we feel this along the side, we can feel that there's kind of a wall right here. It does not have that thinned out, tapered down feeling that you might be used to on a standard shortboard. Lastly, as far as the rocker goes, we can see really easily that this board does not really have a flip in the nose or a flip out in the tail. I can't help but think that the nose rocker was one of the hardest things to dial in on this board, because with a nose this short, any less nose rocker and the board would be purling a lot when we're dropping in, any more rocker, more curve in the nose, and we would kind of be blowing the point of the planing hole on this board, in my opinion. That's because as we add more rocker to the nose, it slows the board down as it's moving forward because of the way that the increased curve up in the nose rocker is plowing water ahead of us. For our final 10% of this board's performance, we can look to the design of the nose and the tail. When you look at the nose of this surfboard, you see some very interesting channels going on in the nose. Sometimes angling is really the challenge. Maybe you can pause this. I hope that I'm doing an okay job of this. There's a main channel right here that starts here and dips down to the center, then dips back up to right here. There's also a little channel running from here to here and a little channel running from here to here. Essentially, it's like this is sort of a little baby single concave here, and there's a little baby single concave right here with these two little V things on either side. First of all, the channel right here on the nose. This channel is really interesting because normally when we look at channels, like the channels back here in the tail of the Vanguard, the job of those channels is to accelerate water flow out towards the back of the board. But with a channel in the nose, this actually doesn't have the goal of doing anything with the water flow, really. Instead, its job is to catch air under that channel and funnel that air into the first little third of the board to keep this board lifting above water as we're dropping in on a wave. Without that channel up there in the nose, this nose would not accept air quite as well when dropping in, and it would become easier to purl the nose of this board. Next in the nose, I think it's interesting to look at these tiny little V-type things up here. Of course, when I'm saying V, I'm using that term pretty liberally because a V, by definition, is something that happens right here in the center of the board. These these two bumps right up here in between the main channel and the two side channels, to me, seem to help the board going rail to rail in the nose. The tail design of this board seems to be centered around lift, speed, and just the right amount of control. When you look at the bottom contours under the tail, we see a channel running through here, a channel running through here, and a main channel running through the center of the board with a V in the center of it to help us get a little bit rail to rail and help us control all of this water flow coming through the center channel. The double diamond tail helps us have a bit of hold in the wave because of the points created here and here. This outside cut shortens up the rail line and helps water release sooner off of this little baby channel here and here, helping us have that release when we want to for a little bit of pivot. Now you may find that you can surf this board with a little bit smaller of a fin than you may be used to because of the way that you can sink a larger portion of the usable rail on this board when you go through turns, essentially using the rail as a fin. I've been able to surf this board with the Julian Wilson fins by FCS, as well as the Mick Fanning MF1 fins by FCS. My preference so far has been surfing this board with the Julian Wilson fins, even though I'm above the weight limit for those fins, because of the way that they allow the board to pivot more. These fins are smaller, and they also have a little bit more of an upright template than the Mick Fanning fin. When I surf this board with the Mick Fanning fins, I feel like this board just becomes a powerhouse for speed and drive. And since I've mostly been surfing beach breaks on this board, it's been more fun to have a pivoty fin. If you want to try either the JW or MF fins by FCS, call a surf shop near you and ask if they have an FCS test drive center so you can see how these fins feel under your feet for yourself. Julian Wilson fin is generally for a medium-sized surfer that wants a bit more pivot in their surfing and a bit more flick off the top of a wave. We'll post a video of Julian Wilson surfing this fin in the YouTube info below. The Mick Fanning fin is generally for someone who wants to focus a bit more on power surfing, longer drawn out turns, but still with a little bit of release in the lip. We'll also put a video below of Mick Fanning surfing his signature fin in the YouTube info as well. You'll probably find that the Vanguard is most fun on a lined up wave that's probably about head high to a few feet overhead, because of the way that you can just race and beat sections on this board, or race and get little cover-ups and then still get out of the barrel because of all the planing that this board lets you do to keep speed and get out of it. You may still find this board really fun in small waves because of the way that you can set your weight on your back foot and still plane forward on a smaller, weaker wave. You really don't have to jump up and down on this board to help it get speed. Instead, you just set your weight back here on the tail because it's so wide and you let the planing hole do the work for you. This board stays true to its name. It's a modern planing hole. You don't really pump this board to get speed. You just set it and let the hole plane for you and give you all the speed that you need. In the end, I think this is a really unique, fun board. I don't think it's just something made to look cool on the rack at a surf shop. It's fast, it's different, it's unlike any board that you've surfed most likely, and it is very worth calling up a surf shop near you to see if they have any Firewire demos you can try. If you want to win a set of FCS2 Performer fins and the boxes that go with them for your next custom surfboard before most shops and shapers even have them, email us at sendmesomefins@gmail.com and answer the questions that you see in the YouTube info below. For more details, check out shredshow.com. That does it for this episode. If you've ever surfed the Firewire Vanguard or the FCS Julian Wilson fin or Mick Fanning fin, please tell us about your experiences in the comments below on YouTube. If you like the video, please click like, not the thumb, but the actual button below the video on the left. And we really hope the waves are up wherever you are until we see you next time.